Hey, GBC Youth Group. Was so excited to hear from Teresa that you guys are going to be starting a study in the book of John. The book of John is one of my favorite books in the Bible. And part of the reason for that is it's a very personal part of my testimony. So to give you some background context, I came to know the Lord at the end of 2019. And my daughter Scarlett had just been born. And so Molly and I were going into the year 2020 with a newborn baby. And as you might remember, the year 2020, a lot of crazy things were happening in the world. There was a pandemic, there was a global shutdown, quarantines, and then that led to a lot of unrest, political unrest. And in the city of Portland, which is where we were living at the time, there were a lot of protests, political protests that would lead to riots. There was a lot of violence and destruction on the streets of Portland that Molly and I were seeing every day or every night. And we were scared because we had a newborn baby and these things were happening on our streets in our city. And we tried to talk about some of those events to our friends and family back east and in other parts of the world. And they didn't believe us. They didn't believe there were riots happening. They didn't believe that there was so much unrest on the streets. And that was scary. The world, our friends, our family, and the rest of the world thought that these protesters were standing for good. And what we saw was a lot of bad. And our friends and family told us that we were lying when we were just saying the truth. We were seeing things with our own eyes and we were saying the truth. So in the summer of that year, one of the nights of these riots, these protesters burnt Bibles on the street. And I just remember thinking, this is so clearly a battle between good and evil, where you have these protesters who claim they are representing a good cause are actually burning the Word of God on the streets. And the very next day, I was out for a walk with Molly and we were pushing Scarlett along in a stroller. And on the street, it was a different street than they had this Bible burning, but on the ground, I found a paperback pamphlet of the book of John. And I just felt like God was sending me a message. God was saying, hey, I know you want to follow me, and here's my word. Here's my written word. And to read this, he put it right in front of my face the night after we watched them burn Bibles on the streets. God wanted me to read this specific book, the book of John. And then I think a week later, we got the same paperback pamphlet book of John in our mailbox, like somebody had left it there. So it gives me chills still today to think about how God was reaching out to me, and he was reaching out to me through his word. So I read it. I picked up the book of John and I started to read it front to back. And one of many themes that you'll see in the book of John is how Jesus deals with truth and lies, like I talked about on Sunday. He also talks about walking in light and walking in darkness. And what we see Jesus say multiple times throughout this book is that he is light. Jesus represents truth. The world, on the other hand, is walking in darkness. The world wants to believe lies instead of believing the truth in Jesus Christ. And that in some ways, God is the only truth. God is the only light. And the rest of the world is lies and darkness. And I felt so personally affected by that message because that's what I was dealing with in my personal life. Telling the truth about things that I had witnessed and things that I had seen, and the world wanting to believe lies instead. Now, that can be kind of scary to think about, that the world we live in, the people we interact with, prefer to believe lies. They prefer to live in darkness. But God reminds us throughout the book of John that He is light, He is truth. And what He tells us, and you'll see in John chapter 16, verse 33, I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. So there it is. And that's just one of many verses where Jesus tells His disciples, tells His followers, tells us to have faith and trust in Him. He has overcome the world. He represents truth. He represents light. And that in order to have life, to have truth, to walk in light, we just need to follow Him. So I hope you guys really enjoy your study. I'm excited to hear about some of the things that you guys are learning, and take care. God bless.